In this video, I'm going to be covering a question that gets asked a whole lot. Not only on my channel, I see it definitely in other areas of the community. And it's a question, it's a fair question, right? A lot of people want to know, what programming languages should you learn as a pen tester? And the answer to really truly answer this is a little bit more complex than just the one line answer that a lot of people say. They're like, well, if I had to pick one, learn Python, right? And how important is it to even know any? Do you even need to learn programming languages in this field? So stay tuned for that. What is up, guys? It's Ryan from elevatecyber. So yeah, what languages do you need to learn for pen testing? Well, let's first start off with the second part of the question. Do you even need programming in the first place? Now, everyone, if you ask like 10 different pen testers, you're going to get a mixed set of answers to this question. In my personal opinion, do you have to? Do you absolutely have to? No, not really. But should you? Absolutely. Like, honestly, you would really have to be going out of your way to not learn programming, right? You're going to have to learn a million other things anyways, right? And programming is going to help you in so many ways. It's never a disadvantage to learn programming in this field, even in general. Personally, I've never even really contemplated this type of question until now, seeing people ask it, because for me, I always thought programming was super cool. I always thought it was super sick how you could use programming language to automate things, right? To take repeatable tasks, menial tasks, and just script it out so the computer can work for you rather than against you. So I always thought that was super neat, and I never even really contemplated the question. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to learn this. So that's where I came from, that kind of area, because I used to work in the IT operations area, right, where I'm dealing with a lot of repeatable tasks and things like that. And as a lot of sysadmins and administrators of various systems do, they are very familiar with their scripting capabilities, because without it, life would be much more difficult. So I kind of come from that background, not too long. That was my first job. I did that for about a year and a half. But so yeah, it hasn't been a question for me really, but what I would say is that, yeah, you should definitely learn it. Now, it also kind of depends what area are you specializing in cybersecurity. There's a lot of people in, say, the bug bounty area that, believe it or not, they claim that they don't know any programming at all. And I think the reason for that is, like, if you think of a speedrunner in video games, right? Someone who can beat a game that would typically take maybe like 10 hours, they could beat it in like 30 minutes, due to basically exploiting the software. These guys are like hackers, essentially, right? But if you think about them, a lot of them, they're really good at finding bugs and skips in games. But a lot of them probably don't have any knowledge of the actual code, like how to actually program video games, right? So in the same vein, you could be really good at finding exploits in web apps and things like that, right? Finding vulnerabilities, but not be too familiar with how to actually develop those web apps in the first place, like with the raw code, if you will. So that is one thing, but if you're going to get really big into, like, say, binary exploitation, especially, you're going to need to learn some code for that type of stuff. If you watch like Live Overflow, the kind of areas that he focuses on in this field, yeah, you're definitely going to need programming for that type of stuff. Maybe you could get away without it if you do purely like a bug bounty type stuff, or even if you do, like, say, purely like an Active Directory type of stuff. But even still, there's going to be times where you're running other people's exploits, right? Code that other people wrote. And if you have that programming knowledge, you can then modify the exploits to your situation, and it's going to make you that much stronger, that much more effective at what you can do, right? Those opportunities for you will be open. Those doors will be open for you because you know how to read the code, how to modify it, rather than having to rely all the time on other people's exploits as well. You could write your own, So there's just too many benefits to learning programming in this field, really, to list them all. So, okay, let's say that you decided, all right, I'm going to learn a programming language. Say you're a beginner, where do you start, right? Well, which language, because there's so many different options out there. That's another very valid question that I get from people. And now, the way you need to look at these languages is you don't want to be too emotionally invested in any language. I know there's a lot of people that are like, I'm a Python guy, I'm a Java guy, I'm a Ruby guy, right? Don't be too invested in like the marketing side of things. You want to view these languages as just tools, like just a means to an end. And that's never been difficult for me to think like that because I'm very pragmatic in general, like with everything in life. I'm a very pragmatic person, but you want to be a little bit pragmatic about your choice in languages because each language is a tool that is better at certain things and worse at other things, right? So you just got to pick the best tool for the job. Now, if you don't know any programming languages at all, pick one. Okay, don't try to learn all of them because what you're going to find is that, I've said this before, but I'll reiterate this. A lot of the programming languages are very, very similar. They just have different nuances and things like that you'd have to learn about them. So if you try to learn like 5 languages at the same time, you're not going to get very deep into any of them. You're going to learn basically the same stuff with all of them, and you're not going to remember any of this stuff. And you're really not going to get too deep into your programming learning. So you want to pick one and go as deep as you can with that. And then when you go to learn your second language, your third language, you're going to pick it up just like that. It's going to be so quick because you've already encountered this stuff in the other language. And at that point, it's just figuring out what the small differences are between like the syntax and things like that. But if you were starting today, right, which language would I recommend you just you go with first? I would say Python. I will echo what a lot of the people in this field recommend because, it is one of the most popular languages out there, which means it's very easy to Google for any of the errors you might encounter along the way. It's really easy to pick up. It's really quick to write. But let's say you're going to learn Python, but you're curious about these other languages out there. I mentioned how they're all tools. What different niches within pen testing does each language fulfill, right? Let's go with Python, right? Scripting language, extremely fast write speed, but slow run speed. So normally as pen testers, we don't really care about how fast the code runs. Typically, it's not really as big of a concern as how quick it is to write. And because of that, because how quick it is to write quick and dirty scripts in Python, especially scripts that are very targeted maybe against that application that they're probably not going to be too reusable, but you just need to write something up quick. That is one of the primary use cases of Python. But even for repeatable tasks as well, something that you can write and do a remote attack, right? So say it's an attack across the network, and Packet is a perfect example of that, right? It's a script that you can run against remote systems across the network to do various things that you might otherwise do locally on an Active Directory domain controller or through, say like a tool like Mimikatz. You would normally do that locally. You can actually do it across the network using Packet. Python makes it extremely easy to work with network protocols and also makes it very simple to run code like that. So that would be another great use case of Python. And so you'll see a lot of tools that are written for enumerating or attacking various services to be written in Python for that reason. Now, let's say that you need to create something that's going to run on a local system, right? Let's say that target system is a Linux machine. Well, it's very common, maybe it's like a privilege escalation type of exploit, right? It's very common that you're going to see that exploit written in C. And the reason for that is that in Linux, basically all of Linux was developed in C, and it's very easy and simple to compile. As long as you have GCC on the box, you can compile it very quickly and easily. There's also a bunch of other ways to do it with like Clang, G++. I'm not going to list all of them, but in that case, you might want to consider writing your exploit in C, especially when it involves a lot of low-level memory type of things. It's very easy to interact with that and to, if you ever done any reverse engineering, most of the binaries you're going to deal with are in C because it's very fundamental in understanding how memory works and things like that. You're going to most likely use that. Now, if you're, say, writing some tool that's going to run on a local Windows machine, and maybe you need to be a little bit stealthy, right? Maybe you want to live off the land a little bit, use native, the native libraries and APIs in order to go a little bit undetected, right? So that's where you might want to consider C#, because with C#, on a Windows box, right? Obviously, you can run C# on Linux machines as well using .NET Core, but for this specific use case, you would be writing a exploit specifically or a tool explicitly to be run on a Windows machine. C# is a great option because you can use, if there's other developers, in that, Active Directory network, right? Chances are they're probably using C#, and so they're going to allow you to use these different libraries and make the different calls that C# would normally make, and it's not going to look suspicious because you'll be blending in with the other legitimate traffic out there. And that's what you want to do if you're coming at things from the red team side. You want to be able to blend in as best as possible. So living off the land, something that people talk about a lot with red teaming, because you can basically do exactly what I mentioned. Use the tools, the libraries that developers would normally be using, except for you use it for malicious purposes. Great use case there. Another one I've heard spring up lately, getting a little bit of traction, is NIM, which is a language that I haven't really honestly played around with much yet, but apparently it will compile down to C code. So whatever you write, it's like Python, and it will convert that into architecture-specific C code. And from there, it makes it very easy to be very stealthy with that stuff as well, but actually at the same time have that write speed of a Python. But right now, there's not much documentation for it. So if you're not a little bit more experienced, I wouldn't recommend going for it right away. But that's one I've heard about through some of the other guys that I watch on various channels and guys in the field as well. They've been talking about it. So, another class we should definitely talk about here is Go, right? Go, I mean, you could also lump C# and Java in this area a little bit as well. Very cross-platform. That's what you would use these for, cross-platform, right? A disadvantage of Python is that it's not at all cross-platform, in the sense that, for us as pen testers, if we have access to a Windows box, we're not going to want to be installing Python on it, because by default, Python is not installed on a Windows box like it is on Linux. And if we want to be stealthy or anything like that, we probably don't want to be installing programs if we don't have to onto the system. So most likely, you're not going to use Python on a Windows machine unless you're doing it over the network with like Empacket or something like that, right? Or some other tool over the network. But if you're actually on the Windows box, you're probably not going to want to use that, but you can use something that's very cross-platform like Java, C#, or what's gaining a lot of traction in recent years is Go, because Go, that's one of the selling points of it. It's very cross-platform. It's very easy to write code one time, and then just when you compile it, just change the flag on one thing to go from compiling it for Windows to compiling it for Linux or whatever. Now, keep in mind with these languages, the libraries you use might actually be architecture specific. So obviously, if you're using native Windows API, it's not going to run on a Linux machine. If you use Linux API, it's not going to run on the Windows machine. So keep in mind your code might make the application not cross-platform, but barring all that, it is very cross-platform, and that is the use case for those tools. And of course, with Go, it is relatively quick to write, which people like about it a lot. Stuff like Java and C#, not very fast to write, a lot more verbose, a lot more typing involved. But Go is relatively fast to write, and it runs a lot faster than Python. So that is one of the advantages there. So obviously, I didn't cover every single language in this video. There's so many. There's too many to list them all. But these were some of the ones I wanted to highlight. Of course, you could keep doing research from here. And if there's another language out there that you want to learn about, you like it, and you see a good use case for it, go ahead. Let me know down in the comment section below. And we're always trying to improve the content on the channel, most certainly. And but hopefully this helped answer your question and help give you a sort of sense of direction when diving into the space, because I know it can be pretty overwhelming, and it's a question that I used to have, which language should I learn? A lot of people have it as well. So yeah, hopefully that helped. And if you want to get right into the content, you want to learn Python, go ahead and check out the Black Hat Python playlist on screen right now. I'll see you guys right over in those videos. Thanks for watching.